I would love to ask you about leadership, especially on the side of the United States. What has the current administration, the Biden administration, done different than the Trump administration, as you understand, that may have contributed to the events we saw this week?
So all I can talk about are where we left them, right? We left them a place where they had tremendous momentum in the Middle East. I met with them during the transition and said, look, we even got the Qatar Saudi conflict done, which was a big. No peace between Israel and Saudi would have been possible without that. So we even got that done in our lame duck period. And they came in and they said, look, we want to focus on the three C's, which is COVID, climate change, and China. And I said, that's great. But, the Middle East, we have an amazing place right now. It's stable. There's momentum. Iran is basically broke. We put such crippling sanctions on Iran that they went from about, I think it was 2.6 million barrels a day of oil they were selling to about 100,000 under Trump. So their foreign currency reserves were basically depleted and they were broke. Same with the Palestinians. We stopped the funding to UNRWA, the UN agency, which is totally corrupt. It's we've put $10 billion in there over time. I did a poll in the Middle East, in Gaza, to say, okay, we've invested $10 billion here as a country. Are we popular? Mm-hmm. Right? The U.S. had a 7% approval rating. USAID had a 70% approval rating, but it just felt like a waste of our taxpayer dollars. And again, we wanted to make it conditions-based. The Biden administration came in. Number one, they started insulting, Saudi and Russia. Oil prices went up. At the same time, what they did was they stopped domestic production of oil. They disincentivized a lot of oil and shale production with regulations. They stopped pipelines. Oil prices went up. They stopped enforcing the sanctions against Iran, probably to get the oil prices lower to make up for what they were doing. They ran to Iran to try to make a deal. They started funding the Palestinians again right away. And I even said, if you're going to fund them, if that's your policy, I respect that. Again, elections have consequences and you can take a different policy. But what I would recommend is get some conditions, make them do some reforms, make them give property rights to people, make them, do real economic investments for people. But they just went right away. So they were funding the Palestinians, not enforcing the sanctions, and then overall just projecting a lot of weakness in the region. So one of the most embarrassing examples is what happened in the United Arab Emirates. Again, an amazing, probably one of America's best allies over the last 20, 30 years. They fought with us in Afghanistan. They were the first Muslim country to stand up and do that after 9/11 because they didn't want it to be a war of the West against the Muslim religion. So they joined the fight because they saw it as a fight between right and wrong. They have rockets shot into their country from the Houthis, and they basically don't get a call from the U.S. for 17 days. They need their equipment that they buy from the U.S., which creates jobs in the U.S. They need it restocked. We don't call. So they've severely degraded the trust that we had to rebuild with our allies. I think they've been working now to get it back. They, after 2 years, started working with Saudi and Israel, which I think was good. I think that they realized after a stint that maybe the process that President Trump had created in the region was the right policy. And keep in mind, President Trump's policy was that I was working on was very strongly criticized during the first 3 years before we were able to achieve the results because it was departure from the failed policies of the past. And so first there was a return to those policies, appease Iran, let's criticize Saudi Arabia. Then they started embracing and working on the Israel-Saudi deal, which was really exciting. I think we were all very excited about it. But they did it in public. And I think that also was something, again, I didn't have access to their intelligence, so I assumed that by doing it so publicly, they thought that they'd either had a deal with Iran because they were letting them get all this revenue where Iran wouldn't be a problem. But one of the reasons with the Abraham Accords, we kept it so quiet during the whole time was because we always felt like the troublemakers in the region, particularly Iran, who we thought would be disadvantaged by having UAE, Saudi, Israel all together. Israel's a nuclear power. You have other strong economies. Iran seeks instability. They seek looking to create division in the region. And if you can create that economic sphere where you have security from Haifa to Muscat, from Israel to Oman, all the way through with Saudi, Jordan, UAE, Qatar, Egypt, that's an incredibly powerful bloc. If you can make it secure and then get economic integration, that really could be a Middle East that thrives. So Iran obviously wanted nothing to do with that. And that's why they've been working to disrupt. So I think the administration they took an incredibly stable situation with momentum. I think they underestimated the way that Iran would approach the region to undermine. I think they gave way too much rope to Iran, and I think that they didn't seize when they had an opportunity of strength with the Palestinians to try to drive to a conclusion that I believe could have prevented us being where we are today. Not to mention that, even just 3 weeks ago, I mean, it's a bad look that they just, basically gave $6 billion to Iran in exchange for hostages. And then Iran's basically funding these terror attacks that are killing American citizens. You have in Israel, and it's a heartbreaking situation. Again, totally avoidable, and one that I think has been very badly mismanaged to date.